Welcome to All Things Chiropractic.
Welcome to All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
Welcome, everybody. Dr. Mark Davini.
The episode we're talking about today, do opposites attract?
All right, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to let that one go.
He's looking into my eyes with this vicious look now. So this is about integrating practices.
Yeah, multi-discipline might be another way people would talk about them. And such a wide, broad topic because it goes all over the map.
Yeah, I think a lot of our listeners probably do this already with massage. It's a very easy one to be complementary and easy to integrate for the most part.
Acupuncture.
Acupuncture is another one,
Very compatible in belief systems and goals and all of that.
Where it gets more complex and the complexity gets ever more, shall we say, complex, is when you start adding in like physical therapy or medicine, right?
Yeah, or invasive procedures that only, say, someone with a medical specialty can perform.
Yeah, and there's
you don't have a license to do what these people do.
Yeah, injectables and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So there's a lot we can unpack here, but let's never mind the statutory and regulatory hoops you have to run into, but looking at the
per state.
Yeah, per state. Looking at the practical, like the day-to-day stuff, really
the big broad strokes.
Yeah. Do you have clarity in the roles that everyone's going to play?
Yeah. What we're really saying is, who's the boss? You have this multidisciplinary
I'm old enough to know that show.
Yeah, there you go. You're Tony Danza, just for anybody else.
Short Italian guys. I wonder why you mentioned that.
Yeah, they're my favorite. But it really is a matter of setting up a hierarchy, and it has to be clearly defined. Who's the boss? In some states, it has to be the medical professional.
Right. If you're going to have medicine, to me, you're setting yourself up for, it's kind of like a sitting barrel of dynamite. Because even with these roles...
That whole Bugs Bunny commercial just run through cartoon run through my head.
Because even if you have the roles clarified, everyone agrees on them, when the practical application comes up, and let's say the chiropractor is saying this person needs care, and the medical doctor is saying, no, actually, I don't think they do.
What do you do?
Right.
Who's the boss?
Now, I suppose it depends. A lot of these integrated practices, it does really fall on the medical doctor mostly. It really does vary by state, but a lot of them do kind of,
Somebody has to be the top of the hierarchy. So that, think about this, patients can call the office and they can ask for one professional or the other. Or they can call the office and just say, I want an appointment. So now, which one do they get referred to? And somebody might say, oh, well, it depends on what the complaint is. Well, what if it's an overlapping complaint? I call the office and I have low back pain. Well, medical doctors treat low back pain. Physical therapists treat low back pain. Massage therapists treat low back pain. Chiropractors treat low back pain. And you have all of them in your office. And the person didn't specify which one they wanted to make an appointment with. What's the protocol?
Right. And
who's the boss?
What if you, I hate to say it this way, get into bed with, what if you start working with a medical doctor who's just used to what medical doctors typically do, refer to physical therapy?
Yeah. So all of a sudden, the medical doctor says, well, in this state, I have to have final clinical decision-making, which means that if somebody comes in with these problems that normally might be somebody I see, I have to try and medically manage them first before we go to what in their minds are more aggressive therapies, like a chiropractor, acupuncture, even physical therapy. So in the world today, a medical doctor considers putting someone on medication conservative management.
PT.
PT.
Pretty routine.
Yeah.
Right. Their consciousness might not even include massage, chiropractic, and acupuncture.
Yeah. What if the medical doctor says, okay, I'm going to let them see the chiropractor in this clinic, but I'm going to direct a chiropractor not to adjust the neck. So it comes down to who's the boss, number one, and then what's the decision-making process and how does that affect your particular protocol in your office? All has to be clearly defined, because when these things are not clearly defined, that's where the controversy, the conflict, and the challenge comes in.
Right. And sometimes you don't know that person, that professional, till you start working with them. They might agree with everything until the practical application comes.
Right.
And then it all leads into this collaboration that we're talking about and coordination of patient management, really, right?
Right. I mean, everybody runs together and they find all these people and they decide they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And they haven't even talked about the few things we've just mentioned, not to mention the few things we're going to mention. So it all has to be decided on in advance. Every scenario, every patient scenario has to be discussed. Who's the one making the clinical decision-making in that office, and basically based on the state. Remember, if you base your practice on services that you as a chiropractor cannot render, if that other licensed professional isn't in the office, that whole service walks away if that person walks away. So you have to remember that your license doesn't cover what they do. Maybe their license doesn't cover what you do also. But if this was your business and you're going to hire somebody and you're going to base the whole business on the fact that this person is in play and that person walks away, you say, oh, I'll just hire somebody else. Maybe, depending upon your market, may not be quite so easy to replace that medical doctor or nurse practitioner or physician assistant or whatever. So just be mindful about the fact that not everybody has a license that you can replace that person. If I hire a chiropractor and that chiropractor quits, I'm a chiropractor. I can replace them, at least temporarily.
Yeah. And I've seen it before where you're held hostage to that licensed professional, right? Because they know that the market's going to be difficult to replace them. And so
they own you.
They're calling the shots.
Yeah.
Until they don't, when they leave anyway. Yeah. And then now you've got a whole caseload that you have to find some other home for.
You build a clinic based on say, an emergency medical model. So you're an emergency department type of thing. People walk in, and it's all based on this medical doctor prescribing certain procedures and protocols, and some of them might be injectables. And maybe your practice becomes very profitable with that particular approach, and then that medical doctor quits. Now all of a sudden they walk away with your business because you can't do what they do. So this coordination and collaboration is important, but it also comes down to understanding that there's a risk here.
And are you speaking the same language? Yes, everybody's in healthcare. Let's put it in general terms. But is everyone speaking the same language? Because the jargon itself can be different.
Oh, what's the goal of the office? Are we pain management? Are we health care? Are we wellness? Are we active treatment? All that we said has to be clearly defined. But then all of a sudden, you're a chiropractor and you use the term subluxation, which is a whole other podcast, right? You use the term subluxation, and the medical doctor doesn't, or the physical therapist doesn't. So it is important, again, to coordinate everything. They may be different disciplines in that practice, but they all have to have one goal, one purpose, one function, one language. Everything has to be simpatico.
Exactly. Word of the day.
Word of the day.
Well, because it leads me to start thinking about, well, if I'm a philosophically based chiropractor, wellness is in the forefront of my mind, but I'm working in this multidisciplinary setting with medical doctors. Does that in itself seem like a conflict?
Yeah, I mean, very commonly a medical doctor's concept of wellness means make sure you get your annual physical and get your vaccinations updated as needed.
Healthy is you're on less than 7 meds. Yo, you're good.
Right. Make sure that your medication is coordinated. It's like, they don't even believe me when I go, and if I talk to anybody and they say, what medications and you're on, I say, I'm not on any. Well, you're almost 70 years old. You must have something. I said, no, I'm not on any medication. Not even blood pressure, not even this, not even that. I get like the Spanish Inquisition every time I
Is
talk
this a
to-
mental health provider
It's
giving you this?
That's my eye doctor.
Oh, okay. I'm just checking.
Oh, so, it's communication is very important at this point in time, and not just what you say and how you say it, but that you all are saying the same thing. That's important.
That kind of lends to the subject that I'm thinking about relative to these different disciplines. And is that, they educated, trained very differently. Their professional development is very different a lot of times.
I had a friend who went to medical school, and they said, we're talking about foot problems. And he said, Mark, you got to understand, when I was in medical school, we got to feet and they said, you have 2 of them. Let's move on.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully.
So yes, it's very different as far as how we are taught, what we're taught. I mean, obviously the body's the body, but there's an orientation. There's a philosophy. There's a discipline. There's a mindset of for all of us. And we have to take that, and it dictates our approach to patients. And chiropractors typically have a different approach to a patient's needs than medicine. So when you're trying to bring the two together, it's not as simple as, like we said in the beginning, having a massage therapist and acupuncturist in the office, because our goals and our orientations are all the same. But when you start bringing in medicine and literally medicine and medical procedures into the mix, you need to have a clear understanding of where all of these come in and out of play.
It could be as simple as the cliche about bedside manner, right? I mean,
Exactly.
In medicine, I'm not going to say in general, but I would say that massage therapists, chiropractors, their bedside manner or warmness is to a better degree oftentimes.
We actually touch people. Oh my God.
Yeah.
When we do a physical exam on somebody and we do a treatment on somebody, we actually touch them.
Yeah.
There's a concept.
So it's getting on the same page with that too. I mean, if you have a very cold, stoic, sterile provider in your office and you're trying to create a warm, friendly, welcoming atmosphere, it may be challenging unless you have these things addressed up front, right?
And what we say goes back to the beginning. So if you really were, say, an emergency department where you're probably not going to be seeing these people past their pain management or whatever, that's a different model than if you're saying, look, I want to have every service you might need available to my community through my office. Then that's a whole different discussion, because it all comes down to, again, everything we've said so far and what we're going to say, because that's complex.
And I have to bring in my world, which is claims processing, right? Because there needs to be a robust education on the administrative staff side of things, because if you're trying to run this multidisciplinary office and you have staff that's only used to billing one type of profession, there likely is a lot of nuances to the claim form, the coding, the modifiers, the diagnosis, the order that have to be dealt with, that and training has to happen so that when you cross these different thresholds of disciplines, you are not creating such a claims nightmare.
And we can't get into a detailed discussion about things like corporate structure. Who's the employee? Who's the boss? But who's the employee? Who's an independent contractor? How do we bill for each one differently from the other? And again, what happens when one comes and goes? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do?
Yeah. To me, it's a venture. I'm just going to talk. My personal opinion is this venture sounds attractive financially at first. until you look at how much it's going to take, both from an energy standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. Because a lot of these multidisciplinary clinics, they churn a lot of money. A lot of money comes in and out. But as far as profitable, when you start to dissect it by profession within the disciplines, you just wonder why they're doing it.
I was going to say the cost of these people, so if you bring in, say, different disciplines, are they just employees? Are they partial owners? So now everything starts eroding the profit more and more and more, depending. If I have to hire a medical doctor or a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant, they're not going to be cheap. And then all of a sudden you're saying, okay, this clinic generates a lot of money, but it doesn't generate a lot of profit. And then you start looking at all the different disciplines and you recognize that, well, geez, all the money's coming from either the chiropractor or the physical therapist, but medicine isn't contributing all that much. So it's not only just figuring it all out like we're talking about, running it, monitoring it, making sure that you know what's working and what isn't working in the practice, and be prepared for change.
Like any office, whether it's single or multidisciplinary, whoever's running the ship, who's creating the culture? What kind of culture is it in the office? The inter-office culture, as much as it's for the patients. And,
And think about this. You do everything that we just discussed and you do it well. It's all in place. Now you have to train everybody. Everybody has to be on the same page. I mean, this isn't a multidisciplinary example, but I remember being in a chiropractic office doing an inspection. I go up to the front desk and there was a couple different doctors in the office. So I'm just kind of doing my little thing, trying to get information. And I walked up to the front desk and I said, so which doctor do you prefer? And the CA looked at me and said, I don't know. I haven't had either. And it's like, you've not been adjusted. No. By either doctor.
Right.
No. Okay. So obviously there's a training problem there. There's a communication issue there. Maybe even a mindset issue there. But the point is training and keeping everybody on the same page, putting out the same message, which we've talked about even in a straightforward chiropractic office. You need to know your message. Your message has to be put out there and has to be put out there over and over again, and it has to be consistent.
To me, this multidisciplinary practice emphasizes that you need strong and reassuring leadership, because if you don't, you're hurting butterflies or cats every single day. And I can't
and they fall apart after a while.
I can't tell you how many times early on when I was doing more like individual consulting in office, I would go in and I'm working with the billing CA or front desk, whatever. And their opinion of their boss was very low. I'll put that kindly.
Yes.
And to the point where like, well, why are you even working here? And basically because they kind of had the run of the place, because it didn't, as long as the stuff get done, adequately, I guess, or at all, it didn't matter. And it was really clear to me after a while that I had to impress upon the doctor, who was the boss typically, that you have a cultural problem within your office, and it starts with you, because
everything top down.
Yeah, it's that Captain Kirk thing where
that's it.
Everything that happens on that ship.
Yeah. My responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
The buck stops here. Yeah,
right.
All of that. And it's true, though. We can throw all that out there, but it's true. Leadership from the top down. And if you don't have that clearly defined, then there's no leadership. And if it's not clearly communicated, and if it's not clearly trained, and then it's not clearly monitored, and it's not regularly checked, and as people come and go, continuity is maintained and consistency is maintained, all of that. Everything we literally just said.
And it kind of goes without saying, but I'll say it because that's who we are through tools of practice, is you're going to need a robust compliance department because
yes, because
there's a lot going on.
You have multiple sets of regulations and laws that have to interact, and sometimes they do conflict. Sometimes again, here in Massachusetts, there's an issue about who's the boss. in a multidisciplinary clinic. So you have to make sure that your state laws for each discipline are complied with.
And sometimes those laws are not super clear,
Ooh.
right? So now you get legal involved,
Yeah.
and then you're churning cash with that. It's funny you talk about this.
Let's not even talk about Medicare.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But you talk about who's in charge. I'll give you real examples here in this state, right? So if a non-massage therapist owns an establishment, they have to hire a licensed massage therapist as their compliance officer if they're going to have a multidisciplinary or a multi-massage establishment license.
Even the same here with chiropractic, yeah.
Or if it's a single, but it's a non-licensee owner. So what the compliance officer, licensed massage therapist, doesn't understand is that their paycheck is coming from their boss, but they're actually the one in charge when it comes to anything massage.
Exactly.
That they can override the person signing their paycheck.
The boss. Yeah.
And they don't get that. They a lot of them fear to exercise that. Then they get themselves in trouble because something happens, regulation is violated. They're the compliance officers, their responsibility. They should have known. And then they say, well, I don't own this place. It's not my decision. Sorry.
Wrong.
Thanks for playing. CMR doesn't say that. So those are the kinds of things you have to have clarity. And if you're the one putting up the time, money, and energy, you still have to understand you might, in certain situations, you might not be the boss.
Right.
That's hard.
Even though you might be the owner.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a lot here to consider, and that's really our point here, is that you don't just start hiring people, open the doors and say, we're here. No. It takes time. You have to develop these strategies, and all in advance, because doing it as you go is just too complicated. Make sure that there's a shared vision. Make sure that there are clear roles. Communication, regular, constant, consistent.
All the things you're saying, all these strategies, they read like a compliance program topics, kind of, right?
I didn't even think of that.
And you know what? You got to embrace technology. I know that it's going to take over our lives, and Skynet's going to go live at some point. We know that. We just know it's going to happen. But until then,
we'll be back.
Right.
Yeah.
There's one word that's going to be the demise of human nature or human society. It's convenience. Convenience is going to kill us eventually. But
because we all run to it.
Yeah. But you need it. I mean, you have a lot juggling here, depending on how many disciplines are under one roof.
And it's not simple. It's not easy. And it will take work. It will take effort. The closing thought here is the only place where success comes before work is the dictionary. Vidal Sassoon.
Right.
If you don't look good, we don't look good.
Wow.
Wow.
And then just remember, when you think you've got it all down, it's ever evolving. So don't fall asleep at the switch.
Every day. Welcome to our world. Right. And with that,
thank you for joining us for another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
Dr. Mark. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to All Things Chiropractic. We'd love to hear from you. Visit allthingschiropractic.com with comments, episode ideas, or questions. Or connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at All Things Chiropractic Podcast. Be sure to join Dr. Mark Davini and Paul Andrews next time for another episode of All Things Chiropractic.